Emergency response team. This is the situation. We need an ambulance now. A trainer's been pulled under. The call crackled through the radios at Pacific Tides Aquarium in San Diego, a desperate plea that shattered the balmy August evening. Marina Lysaro, a woman who had dedicated her life to swimming alongside the ocean's most awe-inspiring giants, was at the heart of a nightmare no one could have foreseen. For years, her bond with Kale, a 20-foot, 9,000-pound orca, had captivated audiences and inspired her colleagues. But on this fateful night, that bond would spiral into tragedy, leaving a legacy of grief, questions, and a global reckoning. This is the harrowing story of a dream broken, a life lost, and a wild heart confined. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear is unlike anything you've ever encountered. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, like, and share, and let's dive into the depths of this heart-wrenching event. Marina Lysaro was no ordinary woman. She was a force of nature, a soul forged in the salt and spray of the sea. Born in 1988 in a small coastal town in Northern California, Marina grew up with the Pacific Ocean as her backyard. Her earliest memories were of tide pools teeming with life, of waves crashing against jagged cliffs, and of her father, a marine biologist, teaching her to respect the ocean's mysteries. At 5, she saw her first orca, a fleeting glimpse of a pod slicing through the horizon during a family boating trip. That moment ignited a spark that would define her life. I knew then, she later wrote in her journal, that I was meant to know them, to be near them, to understand their world. Her childhood was a tapestry of exploration. She spent summers diving into the chilly waters off Monterey Bay, her small frame dwarfed by kelp forests and curious seals. Her mother, an artist, painted murals of whales and dolphins on their home's walls, fueling Marina's imagination. But it was her father's stories, of orcas as intelligent, social beings with languages and families of their own, that rooted her obsession. By her teens, Marina was volunteering at a local aquarium, cleaning tanks and feeding fish, her eyes always drifting to the horizon, dreaming of the day she'd work with the ocean's giants. At 18, Marina enrolled at the University of California, Santa Cruz, majoring in marine biology. Her professors marveled at her intensity, her ability to absorb complex research on cetacean behavior while maintaining an almost spiritual connection to the animals. She spent her weekends interning at a marine rescue center where she helped rehabilitate stranded dolphins and porpoises. It was there she met Dr. Elena Marquez, a cetacean behaviorist who became her mentor. Elena saw in Marina a rare blend of science and soul. She didn't just study whales, Elena later recalled. She wanted to speak their language, to bridge our world and theirs. Marina's path to Pacific Tides Aquarium was not easy. After college, she worked at smaller facilities, honing her skills with dolphins and sea lions. But orcas were her calling, and in 2009, at 21, she landed a job at Pacific Tides, a sprawling complex on San Diego's coast that housed one of the world's most renowned orca programs. The aquarium was a glittering empire of entertainment, its massive tanks and choreographed shows drawing millions annually. For Marina, it was the gateway to her dream. She started as a junior trainer, scrubbing decks and preparing fish, but her talent and tenacity quickly set her apart. By 2012, she was a lead trainer, entrusted with the aquarium's star orca. Kyle was no ordinary orca. Born in 1990 in the wild waters of the North Atlantic, off Norway's rugged coast, he was a creature of boundless freedom. His early years were spent in a tight-knit pod, navigating icy currents and hunting herring with a precision that spoke of centuries of instinct. Kyle's pod was a symphony of clicks, whistles, and pulsed calls, a language that bound them as family. He was a young male, strong and curious, his black and white form a beacon of vitality against the gray sea. In 1995, at 5 years old, Kale's world shattered. A capture team, hired by an international aquarium consortium, descended on his. Putter nets sliced through the water, engines roared, and the pod scattered in panic. Kale, caught in the chaos, was ensnared. His mother's desperate calls echoed as he was hoisted onto a ship, his body thrashing against the restraints. The journey to Pacific Tides was a blur of confinement and fear, his ocean home replaced by a concrete tank. For the aquarium, Kyle was a prize, a young, healthy male whose size and charisma would draw crowds. For Kyle, it was the beginning of a life in exile. At Pacific Tides, Kyle's raw power was undeniable. At 20 feet long and 9,000 pounds, he was a living embodiment of the sea's might, his sleek form gliding through the water with a grace that belied his strength. To audiences, he was a marvel, his dorsal fins slicing the surface, his massive tail propelling him into soaring leaps. But those who worked with him sensed an undercurrent of unrest. Kyle's tank, though one of the largest in the world, was a mere 200 feet long and 50 feet deep, a puddle compared to the endless ocean he was born to roam. The artificial environment, with its sterile walls and filtered water, lacked the currents, sounds, and life of the wild. Kyle's adjustment to captivity was fraught. Early trainers noted his reluctance to eat, his tendency to float listlessly at the surface. Over time, he adapted, learning the routines that earned him fish and attention. But there were signs, subtle at first, then unmistakable. A sudden tail flick during training, a low rumble of frustration, a missed cue that hinted at defiance. In 2001, he snapped his jaws at a trainer who approached too quickly, an incident that was quickly hushed up. In 2007, he refused to perform for 3 days, circling his tank in silence. These moments were logged as behavioral quirks, dismissed by management eager to maintain the illusion of harmony. A former trainer, who left Pacific Tides in 2010, later spoke anonymously to a documentary crew. Kyle was a wild animal, not a pet, she said. We'd see him stare at the tank's walls like he was looking for something beyond them. There were days he'd comply and days he'd push back. We'd laugh it off, call him moody. But looking back, we were ignoring. A ticking bomb. When Marina met Kyle in 2012, it was a collision of kindred spirits. She was 24, vibrant and fearless, her dark hair tied back in a practical braid, her eyes alight with purpose. Kyle, then 22, was at the peak of his physical prime, his massive form a testament to the wild heart that still beat within him. From their first session, Marina felt a connection she couldn't explain. It was like he saw me, she wrote in her journal that night. Not just my signals, but me. I think he's been waiting for someone to understand him. Marina approached Kyle differently than other trainers. Where others relied on strict protocols, she leaned on intuition. She spent hours observing him, noting the way his eyes followed her, the subtle shifts in his posture. She learned his moods, when he was playful, when he was withdrawn, when he needed space. She talked to him, her voice soft and steady, as if he could understand her words. To her colleagues, it was unconventional, even risky. To Marina, it was the only way. Their bond grew over months, then years. Marina and Kyle developed routines that were less about performance and more about partnership. She'd swim alongside him, her hand brushing his flank, guiding him through spins and dives with gestures so subtle they seemed telepathic. Audiences were spellbound, their performances dubbed the Symphony of the Sea. A reviewer for the San Diego Tribune wrote, "Watching Marina and Kyle is like witnessing a dance between two souls. It's not a show, it's a communion." Offstage, Marina was Kyle's fiercest advocate. She pushed for improvements to his diet, arguing that the frozen fish he was fed lacked the nutrients of wild prey. She lobbied for enrichment activities, floating toys, underwater speakers playing ocean sounds to stimulate his mind. She spent her breaks sitting by his tank, sketching him in a notebook filled with drawings of orcas in the wild. Her colleagues admired her dedication, but worried about her attachment. Marina loved Kyle like family, said Javier Ruiz, fellow trainer. She'd stay late talking to him like they shared a secret. I'd tell her to take a step back, but she'd just smile and say, "He needs me." Marina's personal life took a back seat to her work. She lived in a modest apartment overlooking Mission Bay, its walls adorned with photos of Kyle and her diving adventures. Her parents, now retired, visited often, proud but concerned. "You're giving your heart to something that can't give it back," her mother warned during a visit in 2014. Marina laughed, brushing it off. Kyle gives back in his own way, she said. He trusts me. That's enough. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. Kale's history of subtle aggression, those tail flicks, missed cues, and low rumbles, persisted. Marina saw them but interpreted them as communication, not warnings. In 2015, during a training session, Kale bumped her with his rostrum, hard, enough to bruise her ribs. She downplayed it, telling colleagues he was just playing. Management, focused on the bottom line, saw no reason to intervene. The show, as always, went on. The pressure of captivity weighed heavily on Kale. His tank, though state-of-the-art, was a prison to a creature born for the open sea. Orcas in the wild swim up to 100 miles a day, dive hundreds of feet, and live in complex social groups. Kale's world was reduced to a 200-foot pool, his only companions the trainers who came and went. The relentless demand to perform 3 shows a day, 7 days a week, took a toll. His dorsal fin, once tall and proud, began to droop, a common sign of stress in captive orcas. His teeth, worn from chewing on concrete, required regular dental work, a painful reminder of his unnatural environment. Activists had long criticized Pacific tides. Groups like Ocean Guardians and the Cetacean Freedom Network staged protests outside the aquarium, holding signs that read, "Free Kale" and "End Orca Slavery." They cited research showing that captive orcas suffer from stress, depression, and shortened lifespans. The 2013 documentary Blackfish, which exposed the dark side of the orca industry, had shifted public opinion, putting pressure on aquariums to justify their practices. Pacific Tides responded with PR campaigns, touting their world-class care and educational mission. But behind closed doors, trainers whispered about Kale's declining health, his moments of agitation, and the ethical questions they couldn't ignore. Marina wasn't blind to the debate. She read the studies, attended conferences, and wrestled with her role in Kale's captivity. In 2016, she confided in Elena Marquez, her old mentor, during a late-night phone call. "I love him, Elena," she said, her voice breaking. "But sometimes I wonder if I'm keeping him alive or just keeping him here." Elena urged her to advocate for Kyle's retirement to a sea sanctuary, a growing movement to provide captive orcas with more natural environments. Marina agreed but faced resistance from Pacific Tides' management, who saw Kyle as their biggest asset. "He's a performer," the aquarium's director told her bluntly. "This is his life now." Marina's trust in Kyle was unshakable, but no one, not even her, could predict the storm that was brewing. The signs were there: a missed cue in June 2025, a sudden lunge during a July rehearsal, a low growl that sent shivers down Javier's spine. Marina brushed them off, believing she could reach Kale no matter what. What she didn't see, what no one saw, was the breaking point approaching. It was August 12, 2025, a balmy evening in San Diego. The air was thick with the scent of salt and sunscreen, the sky streaked with pink and gold. Pacific Tides Aquarium buzzed with anticipation, its 5,000-seat arena packed for the 7 p.m. Symphony of the Sea show. Families clutched popcorn, children waved glow sticks, and tourists snapped photos of the massive pool, its surface gleaming under the stadium lights. Backstage, Marina was in her element, her wetsuit snug, her hair pulled into a tight bun. She radiated confidence, but there was a flicker of unease in her eyes. Kale had been off during the morning rehearsal, his movements sluggish, his responses delayed. "He's just tired," she told Javier, forcing a smile. "He'll come around." The aquarium was a marvel of engineering, its main tank a shimmering expanse of blue framed by artificial rocks and a towering LED screen that projected images of crashing waves. The stands were a sea of faces, their cheers echoing off the concrete walls. Pacific Tides was more than an aquarium. It was a cultural landmark, a symbol of San Diego's love affair with the sea. But beneath the glitz, it was a business, its profits tied to the animals it confined. Kyle was the linchpin, his performances generating millions annually. The pressure to deliver was immense, and Marina felt it acutely. As the show began, the arena darkened, spotlights sweeping across the pool. A orchestral score swelled, its notes mimicking the calls of whales. Marina emerged from the tunnel, waving to the crowd, her smile bright but strained. She climbed onto a platform at the pool's edge, her gaze fixed on Cale, who circled below. Something was wrong. His movements lacked their usual fluidity, his dorsal fin cutting the water with an erratic rhythm. She signaled for him to approach, but he hesitated, his massive body drifting toward the tank's far wall. The audience, unaware, cheered as the music crescendoed. Marina whispered to herself, "Come on, Kyle, we've got this." She signaled again, her arm extended, her posture steady. At 7:15 p.m., the critical moment arrived, the signature leap that would send her soaring from Cale's rostrum. It was a stunt they'd perfected, a breathtaking display of trust and synchronicity. But Cale didn't follow the script. His approach was too fast, his angle wrong. Marina's instinct screamed, her heart pounding as she braced herself. He surged forward, but instead of lifting her, he nudged her with a force that wasn't playful. She stumbled, her foot slipping on the wet platform, but she recovered, flashing a smile to keep the crowd engaged. The audience clapped, thinking it was part of the act. Marina tried again, signaling for the routine to continue. But Cale's next move was no mistake. With a sudden, powerful lunge, his jaws closed around her leg. The pain was searing, a white-hot agony that stole her breath. The crowd gasped, some still believing it was choreography, but Marina knew. Cale's grip was unrelenting, his eyes, those eyes she'd trusted for years, unreadable. In an instant, he pulled her under. The water erupted into chaos. Marina fought, her arms thrashing as she tried to free herself. Cale's massive form twisted beneath the surface, dragging her deeper into the tank's depths. The pool, lit by underwater lights, became a surreal battleground, bubbles and foam obscuring the struggle. Marina's training kicked in. She twisted her body, aiming for Cale's blowhole, a technique meant to startle an orca into releasing its grip. But Cale was beyond reason, his strength overwhelming. His teeth, worn but sharp, tore through her wetsuit, drawing blood that clouded the water. The audience's cheers turned to screams as the reality sank in. Children clung to their parents, their glow sticks forgotten. On the platform, Javier and two other trainers scrambled, shouting into radios for backup. "Code Red! Code Red!" Javier yelled, his voice hoarse. Staff rushed to the pool's edge, grabbing nets and poles, but Kyle was a force beyond control. The tank's walls amplified his movements, the water churning like a storm. For a fleeting moment, Marina surfaced, gasping for air, her face etched with terror. Her dark hair was plastered to her skull, her eyes wide as she locked onto Cale. In that split second, she searched for the partner she knew, the soul she'd trusted. "Cale, please," she whispered, her voice lost in the chaos. But he pulled her under again, his body spiraling downward, the tank's depth swallowing them both. The struggle was brutal. Marina's strength waned as Cale's power overwhelmed her. Her lungs burned, her vision blurring as oxygen dwindled. The water churned red, her body battered by the orca's relentless grip. At 7:18 p.m., she surfaced once more, barely conscious, her breath shallow and ragged. Her left arm hung limp, her wetsuit shredded. The crowd was in pandemonium, some fleeing the stands, others frozen in horror. Trainers shouted commands, sirens blared, and paramedics raced through the tunnels, their equipment clattering. Cale's behavior was erratic, his massive form circling the tank, Marina still in his grasp. For a moment, he seemed to hesitate, his jaws loosening. Trainers seized the chance, tossing a net into the water, but Cale dove again, dragging Marina with him. The tank's underwater cameras, meant to capture the show's highlights, recorded the grim reality. Marina's body, pale and broken, twisting in the current. Cale's silhouette, a dark specter above her. At 7:25 p.m., Cale released her. His massive body slowed, his circling ceasing as if a switch had flipped. Marina's lifeless form floated upward, her wetsuit torn, her face pale as moonlight. Trainers dove in, risking their own safety to pull her to the platform. Paramedics swarmed, performing CPR with desperate urgency, their hands pressing rhythmically against her chest. "Come on, Marina, stay with us!" one shouted, his voice breaking. The crowd, now hushed, watched in stunned silence, some praying, others weeping. But it was too late. At 7:32 p.m., the paramedics stopped, their faces grim. Marina Lysaro was gone. The coroner's report, released days later, confirmed the devastating truth. She died from massive trauma and drowning, her body crushed by Cale's jaws, her lungs starved of air in the struggle. Her injuries were catastrophic: broken ribs, a shattered pelvis, and deep lacerations that spoke of the orca's raw power. The aftermath was a storm of grief, outrage, and reckoning. Pacific Tide's aquarium went into lockdown, the arena sealed off as investigators swarmed. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, launched a probe, their agents combing through training logs, incident reports, and Cale's behavioral history. What they found was damning. A pattern of ignored warnings, from Cale's early aggression in 2001 to the 2015 incident with Marina. Management had downplayed these events, prioritizing profit over safety. A leaked memo revealed that the aquarium's director had vetoed a proposal to retire Cale in 2020, citing financial implications. Animal welfare groups, long critical of Pacific Tides, seized the moment. Ocean Guardians organized a candlelight vigil outside the aquarium, attended by thousands. The Cetacean Freedom Network released a statement calling Marina's death a preventable tragedy, the inevitable result of confining wild animals for profit. Protests erupted across the country, with activists chaining themselves to the aquarium's gates, their signs demanding justice for Marina, freedom for Kyle. Social media amplified the outcry, with hashtags like #SignFreeKyle and End Captivity trending globally. The public's response was a tidal wave of emotion. Marina's story dominated headlines, her smiling face, often pictured with Cale, plastered across newspapers and screens. Editorials debated the ethics of captivity, with some calling for a boycott of aquariums, others defending the industry's educational value. Pacific Tides, once a beloved institution, became a lightning rod for criticism. Its stock plummeted. Sponsors pulled funding, and attendance dwindled as families grappled with the cost of their entertainment. Marina's family was shattered. Her parents, who had watched her final performance from the stands, were inconsolable. "She loved Kyle," her father said at a press conference, his voice trembling. "She believed in him. We don't blame him. He's a wild animal doing what wild animals do. We blame the system that put them both in that tank." Her mother, clutching a photo of Marina diving as a child, added, "She wanted to save the ocean. That was her dream. We'll fight to make sure her death means something." A memorial for Marina drew hundreds to a San Diego beach at sunset. Friends, colleagues, and strangers gathered, their faces lit by candles as they shared stories of her passion, her courage, her love for the creatures she'd dedicated her life to. Javier, his eyes red from tears, spoke of her as a sister. "Marina saw the best in everyone, even Cale," he said. "She'd want us to learn from this, to do better for him and all the others." Elena Marquez, flown in from Santa Cruz, delivered a eulogy that left the crowd in silence. "Marina was a bridge between our world and theirs," she said. "Her light is gone, but her mission lives on." Marina's death was more than a tragedy. It was a catalyst. In the weeks that followed, governments took notice. California passed the Orca Protection Act, banning the breeding and performance of captive orcas. Other states followed, with New York and Florida introducing similar bills. Internationally, countries like Canada and the UK tightened regulations on marine parks, citing Marina's case as a turning point. Sea sanctuaries, once a distant dream, gained traction, with funding pouring in to create coastal habitats for retired orcas. Pacific Tides announced Cale's retirement from performances, but his future remained uncertain. At 35, he was too old to survive in the wild, his pod long gone. A sea sanctuary in British Columbia offered to take him, but the aquarium hesitated, citing logistical challenges. Kyle, now alone in his tank, swam in endless circles, his dorsal fins sagging, his spirit a shadow of the wild creature he was born to be. Trainers reported that he refused to eat for days, his eyes dull, as if mourning the loss of the woman who had been his closest companion. The debate over orca captivity raged on. Scientists published studies linking confinement to psychological distress, their findings echoed by former trainers who broke their silence. Documentaries revisited Marina's story, drawing parallels to other incidents, like the 2010 death of trainer Don Branchot at SeaWorld. Activists argued that orcas, with their complex intelligence and social structures, were uniquely unsuited to captivity. These are animals who live in families, who travel oceans, who feel grief, said Dr. Naomi Rose, a marine mammal scientist. We've taken that from them, and we're paying the price. Marina's legacy took root in unexpected ways. Her parents established the Marina Lysaro Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to marine conservation and the welfare of captive animals. The foundation funded research, lobbied for policy changes, and supported sea sanctuary projects. Elena Marquez joined as an advisor, channeling her grief into action. Marina would have wanted Kale to feel the ocean again, she said. That's what we're fighting for. Marina Lysaro's story is a wake-up call, a reminder of the cost of our desire to tame the wild. She was a woman who loved the ocean with every fiber of her being, who saw in Kale not a performer but a partner, a soul as vast as the sea. Her dream of connecting with these giants lives on, but it carries a heavy truth. Wild hearts belong in the wild. Kyle, confined to his tank, is a living testament to the consequences of our choices. His bond with Marina, once a symbol of harmony, ended in a moment of primal instinct, a tragedy that could have been prevented. We must ask ourselves, how many more lives, human or animal, will it take to change this? Marina's death is not just a story, it's a call to action. Share her story with the world. Raise your voice for Kyle and the countless others like him, still swimming in circles, their spirits broken by confinement. Support organizations like the Marina Lysaro Foundation, Ocean Guardians, and the Cetacean Freedom Network who fight for the freedom of captive animals. Educate others about the true cost of captivity, the hidden suffering behind the spectacle. Change begins with us. Marina believed in a world where humans and animals could coexist with respect, not exploitation. Her sacrifice demands that we honor her vision. Let her light guide us toward a future where no orca languishes in a tank, where no trainer risks their life for a show, where the ocean's giants are free to roam as they were born to do. Thank you for joining us to honor Marina Lysaro, a woman whose love for the ocean will never fade. Like, share, and subscribe to keep these stories alive. Together, we can ensure her legacy sparks the change she would have wanted. Let's make her dream a reality. For Kale, for the ocean, for us all.